everyone, this is a practice IB exam for math studies, and we're going to answer all these questions. We're going to find the exact value of each of the zeros of f. So for that, we just set this to 0 and set the first part to 0 and the second part to 0. We're just letting this equal 0. So let's solve for x. So subtract 2. So x equals -1. And for this one, add x squared to both sides. And then square root both sides. Don't forget your plus and minus. So you're going to have x equals plus square root of 5 and minus square root of 5 and -1. So those are your 3 zeros. Now we're going to expand the expression. So we're just going to FOIL that out. And you just, however you do it, you're going to get 10x minus 2x cubed plus 10 minus 2x squared. And if you want, let's go ahead and call this f of x. You can write it in descending powers here. Okay. And then we're going to find the derivative. So for the derivative, we're going to use, let's see, -2x cubed. You don't have to use this one. You can use the one that you didn't simplify, but when you, that's f of x. So when you take f prime of x, you're going to get -6x squared minus 4x plus 10. And then we're going to use our answer in this part to find where the values are increasing. So we have f of x equals -6x squared minus 4x plus 10. And we want to set this where it's increasing, so greater than 0. So what I'm going to do is factor out. First of all, let's divide everything. So we're taking this piece here. Divide everything by 2, and you get -3x squared minus 2x plus 5 is greater than 0. I want to go ahead and factor out this negative just to make it easier. So that's 3x squared plus 2x minus 5 is greater than 0. And then we're going to factor this. So we're going to get 3x plus 5 and x minus 1. And that will give you that 2x in the middle there. Now we're going to do a sign diagram. So we have this part is going to be -5/3, and this part is 1. And we still have this -1 out here. So when I do a sign diagram, I'm going to write it out. And I have -5/3. Go ahead and put your 0 in. Put the 1 in. And we're going to test this out. So basically, when you plug in, let's plug in 0. So if I plug in 0 into -3x plus 5 times x minus 1, I plug a 0 in here, I'm going to get a negative, and this is going to be a positive, this is going to be a negative. So two negatives make a positive, and with a positive, that's going to be positive. So in between here, it's positive. Now, if you want to plug in 2, if I plug in 2 in here, I'm going to get a negative, and then a positive, and a positive. So I plug in 2. So bigger than 1 is going to be negative. Similarly, if I put in negative 2, let's just do negative 2. You plug in negative 2, you're going to get negative, negative, negative. 3 negatives make a negative. So where it's increasing is in between these 2 points, because that's positive. So you can write this as x is in between negative, well, it's increasing. It can't equal it. So it's in between negative 5/3 and 1. You can also write this as negative 1.67 if you put it in the calculator. So there's where it's increasing. Now the last part, we have to graph this, and you're supposed to use centimeter paper, which I don't have. So I just did a sketch of the graph. I put it this equation in the calculator, and I used our y1 equals negative 2x cubed minus 2x squared plus 10x plus 10. I put that in the calculator, and I graphed it as such. So what I did is, I know the y-intercept was 10, and they want it from negative 3, so I let this be, it said use a scale of 2 centimeters to represent 1 unit, so I just went by 2 here, even though this is not centimeters. I also looked in the calculator, I did second graph, and I found these key points, and I estimated the graphs. Then I plugged in, I looked at negative 2, I looked at negative 1, and all these key points. This was, I think, negative 16. This was like negative 32 right in here, and I graphed it. You have to be very careful in the IB exam to graph really carefully, and you get your centimeter paper. So make sure you make nice curves and graph that nicely within that framework in here. All right. Then the last question is the graph of 5 to the x plus 6x minus 6 intersects the graph. Write down the points of intersection. So since I already had this first graph in my y1, I just typed in the y2, or inputted the y2 of this graph. It doesn't say you have to graph it. And then I did second trace, number 5, and calculated the intersection. I think it's in here somewhere. Kind of goes like that. But you don't have to graph it. And when you do that, you're going to get, see, did I write it down? Let's see. You're going to get the intersection as 1.49, comma 13.9. And that should show up on your calculator. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.